A paint mare lay trapped beneath the collapsed roof of an abandoned grain silo, every breath weaker than the last. No one knew how long she had been fighting, but someone was about to find her, someone whose life would never be the same. The August sun beat down on the cracked earth like a hammer on an anvil. Heat shimmered off the desert floor in waves, turning the horizon into liquid silver. Sarah Carver, 34, ranch foreman turned drifter, pulled her truck to the side of the dirt road and killed the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. No birds, no wind, just the ticking of hot metal cooling. She hadn't meant to stop here. The old Henderson property had been condemned for 3 years, ever since the fire took the main house and the bank took everything else. But something made her pause. Maybe it was the broken fence post leaning at an odd angle, its wire strands cut clean through, not rusted, not weathered. Cut. Sarah stepped out into the heat. The air tasted like dust and old regret. She'd driven this route twice a week for the past month, hauling feed to the ranches that still survived out here, trying to outrun the memory of her daughter's empty bedroom and her ex-husband's final words. "You chose those damn horses over your own family." The accusation still burned, maybe because it was true. A sound stopped her mid-step, faint, desperate, almost like there it was again, a low, guttural groan that didn't belong to the wind. Sarah's pulse quickened. She scanned the property, the skeletal remains of the main house, the listing barn with its doors hanging open like a scream frozen in time, and beyond it, the grain silo. One side had caved in completely, its corrugated metal panels twisted into brutal angles. The sound came again, weaker this time. No, please God, no. Sarah ran. Her boots kicked up plumes of dust as she crossed the yard, dodging rusted equipment and coils of barbed wire. The heat pressed down on her shoulders like hands trying to stop her, but she pushed through, her heart hammering against her ribs. She reached the silo and stopped, her breath catching. Through the collapsed opening, she could see her. A paint mare, maybe 15 hands, pinned beneath a massive roof beam and twisted sheets of metal. Blood matted the white patches on her chest. Her eye, wild, rolling, glazed with pain, found Sarah's. And in that moment, Sarah saw everything: the mare's terror, her exhaustion, the resignation creeping in at the edges. She'd seen that look before, in the mirror. 3 months after the divorce, when she'd stood in her daughter's doorway and realized she didn't know how to fix what she'd broken. The mare's breathing was shallow, labored. Each exhale sent a small cloud of dust into the air that caught the light streaming through the collapsed roof. How long had she been here? Hours? Days? Sarah's phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. Out here, you were on your own. Always had been. She circled the silo slowly, her mind racing. The main beam was pinning the mare's hindquarters. The metal panels had created a cage around her barrel and shoulders. One wrong move, and the whole structure could collapse further. One wrong move, and... The mare whinnied, a broken sound that cut through the afternoon heat like a knife. Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest. She'd been running for months, running from grief, from guilt, from the hollow space where her life used to be. But this mare, trapped, alone, fighting with everything she had left, she wasn't running. She was still here, still breathing. Not on my watch. Above them, a raven called out, a harsh, grating sound that echoed across the empty property. Sarah looked up just as a shadow passed over the sun. Storm clouds, bruise purple and moving fast, gathered on the western horizon. She had maybe 2 hours,
maybe less.
Sarah pulled her work gloves from her back pocket and moved toward the opening. The mare's eye tracked her movement, ears pinned flat, nostrils flaring. Trust would be a luxury neither of them could afford. "Easy, girl," Sarah whispered, her voice rough from disuse. "I've got you." But as she knelt beside the collapsed metal, feeling the sharp edges bite into her palms even through the gloves, she wondered if she was lying. To the mare, to herself, or if, maybe, this was the first true thing she'd said in months. Sarah crouched at the edge of the collapsed silo, her shadow falling across the mare's bloodied shoulder. Up close, the damage was worse than she'd thought. The roof beam, easily 300 pounds of weathered pine, had the horse pinned at an angle that made her hind legs useless. The mare's breathing came in short, panicked bursts, each one sending ripples of tension through her trapped body. "Easy," Sarah whispered. "Easy, girl." The mare's ear flicked toward her voice, but the eye remained wild, rolling white at the edges. Sarah had seen that look before. Pure survival instinct, the moment when prey animals make their final calculations about whether to fight or surrender. She needed to assess the situation properly. Moving too fast would spook the mare. Moving too slow would cost them both the storm rolling in from the west. Sarah's mind worked through the mechanics. The beam was the primary problem, but it was wedged under two panels of corrugated metal that had folded like a house of cards. Pull one wrong piece and the whole structure could shift, crushing the mare beneath it. Or worse, crushing them both. Call someone. Call the fire department. Call a vet. The thought came automatic, trained into her from years of ranch management. But her phone was useless out here, and by the time she drove back to get signal, found help, and returned, the storm would be here. The mare would be gone. Crushed under more debris, or drowned if the silo flooded, or simply dead from shock and blood loss. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled off her gloves. She needed to think. She needed to... "You always think you can save everyone, don't you?" Her ex-husband's voice, sharp as barbed wire, echoed in her memory. They'd been standing in the driveway, his truck already packed, Emma's stuffed animals visible through the back window. Sarah had been up for 36 hours straight with a colicky gelding, her clothes still smelling of liniment and manure. "That horse didn't need saving. Our marriage did. Our daughter did. But you chose them." Had she? Or had she just been too afraid to face the things she couldn't fix with hard work and steady hands? The mare groaned, a low sound that pulled Sarah back to the present. There was no one to call, no one to blame. Just her, the horse, and the choice in front of her. She moved slowly, circling the debris field. The mare tracked her with that wild eye, breath coming faster. Sarah kept her movements deliberate, telegraphed. She'd been working with horses since she was 8 years old, 26 years of reading their language, understanding their fear. "I know," she murmured, more to herself than the mare. "I know you don't trust me. Hell, I don't trust me either." She found a gap in the metal panels, maybe 2 feet wide, where she could squeeze through. The space would bring her close, dangerously close, to the mare's head and teeth. One thrash and Sarah would have a shattered jaw. One kick from those trapped hind legs and she'd never work again. But there was no other way to reach the beam. Sarah knelt at the opening, her heart hammering. She could smell blood now, sharp and copper bright, mixing with the scent of old grain and dust. The mare's breathing hitched when Sarah's boot scraped against metal. "Hey," Sarah said softly. "Hey, beautiful. I need you to let me help you." The mare's nostril flared. For a moment, just a heartbeat, their eyes met. And Sarah saw it. The exhaustion beneath the fear. The way the mare's legs had stopped fighting. The resignation settling in like dust. She'd seen that same look in her daughter's eyes the day Emma stopped asking when Mommy would come home from the barn. 10 years old, standing in the kitchen of her father's new apartment, shoulders slumped, already learning that some promises couldn't be kept. Not this time. Sarah squeezed through the gap. The space was tighter than she'd thought, the metal edges catching on her shirt, her belt. The mare tensed, a full-body shudder that sent debris rattling. Sarah froze, barely breathing. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay. I've got you." But the mare didn't believe her. Why would she? Sarah was just another predator in a world full of them, another thing that wanted to hurt her, trap her, take from her. Sarah forced herself to breathe, slow and steady. In through the nose, out through the mouth. She'd learned this from her grandfather, the one who taught her everything about horses. He died when she was 16, a quiet heart attack in the barn while feeding the morning hay. She'd found him lying in the aisle, still holding the flake he'd been about to distribute, his old gelding standing over him like a sentinel. "Horses remember everything," he used to say. "Every kind word, every betrayal. You want their trust, you gotta earn it. And once you break it, you never get it back." Sarah was close enough now to touch the mare's neck. Her hand hovered there, inches away, feeling the heat radiating off the horse's skin. The mare's muscles were rigid, coiled tight with pain and terror. "I know it hurts," Sarah said. "I know you're scared. God, me too." She let her hand drop onto the mare's shoulder. The contact was electric. The mare flinched, but didn't thrash. Sarah felt the heartbeat beneath her palm, rapid as a hummingbird's wings. "That's it," she breathed. "That's it, girl. Just like that." She began to move her hand in slow circles, feeling the sweat and blood matting the mare's coat. The horse was well fed, well muscled. Not a wild Mustang, someone's horse. Someone who'd lost her, or abandoned her, or couldn't afford to keep her. Another casualty of this brutal country that took and never gave back. The mare's breathing slowed, just a fraction. Sarah kept her hand moving, kept her voice low and constant, a stream of meaningless words that meant everything. "I'm here. I see you. You're not alone." Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time moved strange in this collapsed cathedral of metal and dust, with the sun sliding toward the storm clouds and the mare's heart beating against Sarah's palm like a prayer. Finally, the mare let out a long breath, almost a sigh. Her head drooped just an inch. Surrender, or trust. Sarah couldn't tell which, but she'd take either one. "Good girl," Sarah whispered. "Good, brave girl." She needed to examine the beam now, figure out how to move it without bringing down the rest of the structure. She slid her hand down the mare's shoulder, over the ribs, feeling for other injuries. There, a deep gash along the barrel, still bleeding. And there, swelling on the right hind leg, probably from thrashing against the metal. The mare tensed when Sarah's fingers found the wound, but didn't strike out. Another small miracle. Sarah shifted position, trying to get a better angle on the beam. Her boots slipped on something slick, blood or oil or rotted grain, and she fell forward, catching herself against the mare's neck. The mare's head jerked up, eye rolling, and for a terrible second, Sarah felt the full power of 1,500 pounds of panicked horse beneath her hands. "Whoa," Sarah said, her voice sharp with her own fear. "Whoa, easy." The mare froze. They both froze, locked together in that terrible moment of decision. Would the mare fight? Would she give up? Would Sarah's presence be the final straw that broke her will to survive? But then the mare's head lowered again, resting against Sarah's shoulder. The gesture was so unexpected, so devastatingly trusting, that Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. When was the last time something had leaned on her? When was the last time she'd let herself be leaned on? Sarah wrapped her arm around the mare's neck and let herself cry. 3 months of grief she'd been swallowing, pouring out into this broken horse's mane. The mare stood quiet, breathing with her, sharing the moment of absolute surrender that precedes every resurrection. "Okay," Sarah said finally, wiping her face on her sleeve. "Okay, we're going to do this. Both of us. Together." She studied the beam with new focus. There was a gap beneath it, maybe 6 inches, where she could get leverage with something, a jack or a pole, or even her truck if she could get it close enough. But first, she needed to stabilize the panels above, so they wouldn't collapse when the beam shifted. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was close now, close enough to smell the rain coming. Sarah squeezed back out through the gap, moving faster now. She had work to do. They both did. The mare whinnied after her, not panicked, but questioning. "Where are you going? Don't leave me." "I'll be right back," Sarah called over her shoulder. "I promise, I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in 3 months, she meant it. Sarah ran to her truck, her boots kicking up dust that caught in her throat. The storm was closer now. She could feel the pressure drop, that heavy stillness before the sky opened up. She had 45 minutes, maybe less. Her truck bed held the scattered remains of 3 months of running. Tarps, rope, a come-along winch she'd bought for a job that never materialized, random tools she'd collected at ranch auctions. She grabbed the winch, a coil of climbing rope, her toolbox, and the heavy-duty jack from behind the seat. Her hands were already shaking. When she returned to the silo, the mare whinnied, a desperate, questioning sound that cut straight through Sarah's chest. "I'm here. I came back. I promised." "I've got you," Sarah called, dropping the equipment at the edge of the collapse. "We're doing this." She squeezed back through the gap, slower this time, her arms loaded with rope. The mare's eye tracked her, less wild now, but still afraid. Sarah could see the full extent of the injuries in the fading light. The deep laceration across the barrel was still bleeding. A slow, steady seep that had matted the white patches of her coat dark red. The right hind leg was swollen from hock to hoof, the skin tight and hot to the touch. But it was the beam that worried Sarah most. It sat across the mare's hindquarters at an angle, pinning her pelvis to the ground. The weight had to be crushing. Every minute under that pressure increased the chance of permanent nerve damage, shattered bones, internal bleeding. Sarah ran her hands along the beam, assessing. It was wedged under 2 panels of corrugated metal that had folded when the roof collapsed, creating a precarious A-frame above them. If she used the jack to lift the beam, the panels might shift. If the panels shifted wrong, the whole structure could pancake down. She closed her eyes, thinking through the mechanics. Stabilize first, then lift. Sarah threaded rope through the gaps in the metal panels, creating a web of tension that might hold the structure stable when she moved the beam. Her fingers fumbled with the knots, muscle memory competing with adrenaline. Her grandfather had taught her these knots when she was 8 years old, standing in the barn on a February morning, the air so cold her breath came in clouds. "A good knot might save your life someday," he'd said, guiding her small hands through the motions. Or someone else's. The first knot held, the second. The third slipped and Sarah had to start over, her hands slick with sweat despite the cooling air. Thunder rumbled closer. The mare shifted beneath the beam, groaning with the effort, and Sarah's heart lurched. "Stay still," she whispered. "Please, baby, stay still." Finally, the rope web was secure, anchored to the silo's remaining support beams. Sarah positioned the jack under the beam, wedging it into the narrow space between wood and ground. The mare's breathing quickened. She could feel something changing, some new danger approaching. "It's okay," Sarah said, but her voice cracked. Because it might not be okay. This might be the moment when everything went wrong, when Sarah's choice to act alone killed them both. She began to pump the jack. The mechanism was old, reluctant, fighting her on every stroke. Her shoulders burned, sweat ran into her eyes. The beam shifted, an inch, maybe two, and the metal panels above them groaned like something alive. The mare tried to lunge forward. Sarah's heart stopped as 1,500 pounds of panicked horse threw itself against the trap, but the beam held her fast. The movement sent a sheet of metal sliding, screaming against its brothers, and Sarah threw herself over the mare's neck, shielding them both as debris rained down. They froze together in the aftermath, both breathing hard, both waiting for the collapse that would end them. But the rope web held. Barely. Two of the knots had pulled tight enough to cut into the metal, but they held. "Okay," Sarah gasped. "Okay. No more of that, please, no more of that." She went back to the jack, pumping harder now, desperation replacing caution. The beam rose another inch. Another. The mare felt the pressure releasing and tried to move again, but Sarah was ready this time. "Wait," she commanded, her voice sharp and sure, the voice she'd used on 1,000 horses in 1,000 situations. "Not yet. Wait." And incredibly, impossibly, the mare waited. Sarah pumped until her arms felt like they'd tear from her shoulders. The beam was 6 inches off the ground now, high enough that the mare could theoretically pull free. But the hind leg was still trapped beneath a fold of metal that had pinched closed when the roof collapsed. Sarah could see it now, a jagged piece of corrugated steel that had wrapped around the mare's cannon bone like a vice. She'd need to cut it. And to cut it, she'd need to get close to hooves that could shatter her skull with one terrified kick. Sarah grabbed the bolt cutters from her toolbox. Her hands were shaking so badly, she almost dropped them. She took a breath. Another. "You can do this. You have to do this." She positioned herself at the mare's hip, angled away from the killing zone of those hooves. The mare's skin twitched under her touch, every muscle coiled tight. Sarah placed one hand on the mare's haunch, feeling the tremors running through the animal's body. "Easy," she murmured. "Easy, brave girl. This is going to hurt, but then you're free. Then you can run." She fitted the bolt cutters around the first section of metal. The mare's head came up, ears pinned flat. Sarah squeezed. The metal resisted, then gave with a sharp crack that echoed through the silo like a gunshot. The mare exploded. Sarah felt it coming and dove backward, but not fast enough. The mare's hoof caught her in the ribs, a glancing blow that still sent her sprawling into the debris. Pain bloomed white-hot across her chest. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see. The world tilted and spun. When her vision cleared, the mare was thrashing against the remaining metal, wild-eyed and screaming. The beam shifted on the jack. The rope web groaned. One of the panels buckled. "Stop!" Sarah shouted, pushing herself up despite the fire in her ribs. "Stop! You'll kill us both!" But the mare was beyond hearing, beyond reason. 3 days. Sarah could see it now. 3 days trapped in this hell. And Sarah's touch had been the final betrayal that broke her. Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself at the mare's head, wrapping both arms around that powerful neck, pressing her face into the sweaty coat. "I know," she sobbed. "I know it hurts. I know you're scared. I know you think I'm just another thing that's going to hurt you. But I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving you here. So if you're going to die, you're taking me with you, you hear me? We're both going or neither of us is going." It was insane. It was suicidal. But something in Sarah's voice, or maybe just exhaustion, cut through the mare's panic. The thrashing slowed, stopped. The mare's head dropped against Sarah's shoulder, that same gesture of surrender she'd made before, and Sarah felt hot tears soaking into her shirt collar. Not from her eyes, from the mare's. They stood like that for a long moment, two broken things holding each other up in the ruins of a place neither had chosen. Thunder cracked overhead, so close Sarah felt it in her bones. The first drops of rain hit the metal roof like bullets. "Okay," Sarah said finally. "Okay, let's try again. Together this time." She picked up the bolt cutters. The mare flinched but didn't pull away. Sarah positioned the tool around the second section of metal. Her ribs screamed with every breath, but she ignored them. She'd dealt with cracked ribs before. They hurt like hell, but they didn't kill you. "Ready?" she asked. The mare's ear flicked back toward her voice. Sarah squeezed. The metal gave. The mare tensed but held still, every muscle trembling with the effort of trust. One more cut. Sarah adjusted position, found the final section of metal, squeezed. The bolt cutters slipped. Sarah's injured ribs sent a lightning bolt of pain through her chest, and she dropped the tool, gasping. The mare turned her head, looking back at Sarah with that one visible eye. And in that eye, Sarah saw something she hadn't seen in 3 months. Purpose. Not for the mare. The mare had always had purpose, had always been fighting to survive. But reflected back at Sarah, a reminder of who she used to be. The woman who fought for things, who saved things, who didn't run when it got hard. Sarah picked up the bolt cutters, positioned them, and squeezed with everything she had left. The metal snapped. The mare lunged forward, scrambling with her front legs, dragging herself out from under the beam. The jack collapsed. The beam crashed down. The panels above shifted, groaning, and Sarah had maybe 3 seconds to get out before the whole structure came down. She dove for the gap in the metal, pulling herself through as the silo collapsed behind her. The sound was deafening, metal shrieking, wood splintering, decades of rot and weather finally claiming their due. Sarah rolled away from the collapse, covering her head, and felt the ground shake beneath her. Then silence. Just the rain, starting in earnest now, drumming on metal and earth. Sarah looked up. The mare stood 20 feet away, 3-legged, bleeding, trembling, but standing. Free. Their eyes met, and for a single heartbeat, Sarah saw everything they'd both been through reflected back. The pain, the fear, the choice to fight anyway. The choice to trust when trust was the last thing either of them had to give. Then the mare took a step, and another, limping badly, but moving, alive. Sarah started to laugh, or maybe cry. She couldn't tell which anymore. She pushed herself to her feet, ribs protesting, and walked slowly toward the mare. The mare watched her come, ears forward now, and when Sarah reached her, the horse lowered her head and pressed her forehead against Sarah's chest. "You're going to be okay," Sarah whispered into the rain and the thunder and the space between them. "We both are. I don't know how yet, but we are." And standing there in the storm, with a bleeding horse and 3 cracked ribs and the ruins of a grain silo behind them, Sarah believed it. For the first time in 3 months, she believed it. The mare nickered softly, her breath warm against Sarah's neck. It sounded almost like a name, like an introduction, like the beginning of something neither of them had asked for, but both desperately needed. "Hope," Sarah said. "I'm going to call you Hope, because that's what you just gave me back." Hope, because that's what she was. Standing on 3 legs in a rainstorm, with blood running down her side, still breathing, still fighting, still here. A reminder that survival wasn't pretty or easy or painless, but it was possible. Sarah wrapped her arm around Hope's neck, and together they walked toward the truck. 2 broken things learning how to be whole again, one painful step at a time. The emergency vet clinic was 40 miles away, down roads that turned to mud in the rain. Sarah drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand pressed against her ribs, every pothole sending white-hot pain through her chest. In the trailer behind her, Hope stood 3-legged, braced against the movement, her labored breathing audible even over the storm. Sarah had called ahead. Dr. Martinez would be waiting. The clinic appeared like a mirage through the rain, a low building with lights blazing in every window. Sarah had barely stopped the truck before the vet was at the trailer door, rain streaming down her face, her experienced hands already assessing the damage. "How long was she trapped?" Dr. Martinez asked, her voice calm despite the urgency. 3 days, maybe more." The vet's expression tightened. She moved around Hope's hindquarters, examining the swollen leg, the deep laceration, the way the mare held herself. "Get her inside, now." The next 6 hours blurred together in a haze of fluorescent lights and medical terminology Sarah only half understood. Lacerations cleaned and sutured. X-rays showing miraculously no fractures, but severe soft tissue damage and possible nerve involvement. IV fluids running through Hope's neck. Antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, pain medication that finally let the mare's rigid muscles relax. "She's lucky," Dr. Martinez said, around 2 in the morning. They stood outside Hope's stall, watching the mare eat her first real meal in days. "Another day under that beam, and we'd be having a very different conversation. The leg might recover full function, but it'll take months, maybe a year." "Will she be sound?" Sarah asked, though she knew the answer didn't matter. Sound or not, Hope was hers now. That decision had been made in a collapsed grain silo with rain hammering down around them. "Too early to tell. We'll know more in a few weeks." Dr. Martinez turned to Sarah, really looking at her for the first time. "Now, let's talk about those ribs." Sarah waved her off. "I'm fine." "You're not. I can hear you wheezing from here. Sit down before you pass out." The X-rays showed 3 cracked ribs and a badly bruised sternum. Dr. Martinez wrapped Sarah's chest in bandages so tight she could barely breathe, prescribed painkillers Sarah wouldn't take, and threatened to admit her if she didn't rest. "Someone needs to watch her overnight," Sarah said, nodding toward Hope's stall. "I have overnight staff." "She doesn't know them. She needs..." You, Dr. Martinez finished. She needs you. I know. There's a cot in the office. Use it. And if you die on my watch, I'm billing your estate for the inconvenience. Sarah slept in Hope's stall instead, curled against the far wall where she could see the mare's chest rise and fall. Every breath Hope took felt like a victory. Every hour she survived felt like a miracle they'd stolen together from the jaws of something that wanted to devour them both. Sarah rented a small paddock at the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just 10 acres of scrubland with a run-in shelter and a stock tank that needed constant filling. It cost most of what she had saved, but money felt abstract compared to the solid reality of Hope standing in morning sunlight, finally clean, finally safe. The first week was about survival. Twice daily wound cleaning, medications crushed into sweet feed, cold hosing the swollen leg until Hope learned to lean into the relief it brought. Sarah moved through the routines with mechanical precision, the same focus she'd once applied to managing a ranch with 40 horses and a staff of 6. But at night, when the work was done, Sarah would sit in the dirt beside Hope's shelter and let herself feel everything she'd been running from. The empty apartment she'd rented after the divorce, the phone calls from Emma that came less and less frequently, the way her hands shook when she tried to hold a coffee cup, remembering all the morning coffees she'd skipped to feed horses before her daughter woke up for school. Hope would stand over her during these moments, head lowered, breathing softly against Sarah's hair. Not asking for anything, just present, just there. "I don't know how to fix it," Sarah confessed one night, 2 weeks after the rescue. The stars were out, brilliant and cold. "I don't know how to be a mother from 3 states away. I don't know how to explain that I wasn't choosing horses over her. I was just the only person who knew how to save them. And if I didn't do it, who would?" Hope's ear flicked toward her voice. The mare had learned Sarah's rhythms, could distinguish between her truck and any other vehicle a mile away, would whinny when Sarah appeared in the morning like she'd been waiting all night. "You waited for me," Sarah said. "In that silo. You could have given up, should have given up, but you didn't." She pulled something from her pocket, a small fabric horse, faded and worn, one ear chewed off by years of love. Emma's favorite toy from when she was 4. Sarah had found it in a box of things her ex-husband had packed, things he said Emma didn't want anymore. "She gave this to me the last time I saw her," Sarah whispered. "Said she was too old for stuffed animals. But I think she was really saying she was too old to wait for me to come home." Hope lowered her head, lips exploring the small toy in Sarah's palm with careful curiosity. Then she did something unexpected. She lay down. 1,500 pounds of horse folding herself onto the ground in a display of vulnerability that horses only show when they feel completely safe. Sarah's breath caught. She moved slowly, lying down beside Hope, pressing her cheek against the mare's warm neck. They stayed like that for a long time, breathing together under the stars. 2 creatures learning that survival and healing weren't the same thing. But maybe, together, they could figure out the difference. The mountain lion appeared in the 3rd week. Sarah was in the shelter, rebandaging Hope's leg, when the mare's head shot up, ears pinned forward, nostrils flaring. Every muscle went rigid with prey animal recognition of predator nearby. What? Sarah started, then heard it. A low cough from the ridgeline above the paddock. And there, silhouetted against the setting sun, the distinctive shape of a big cat. Hope tried to bolt. The injured leg buckled and she went down hard, screaming. Sarah threw herself over the mare's neck, her own heart hammering. The lion was 100 yards away, too close, way too close. "Get up," Sarah urged. "Hope, get up, please." But Hope was down and the leg wasn't supporting weight, and the lion was moving closer, drawn by the scent of blood and vulnerability. Sarah looked around wildly. No weapon, no phone signal, nothing but her body between the predator and the horse. She stood up, making herself as large as possible. "Hey!" she screamed. "Get out of here!" The lion paused, ears flicking, evaluating. Sarah grabbed a lead rope, spinning it overhead like a lasso, yelling until her throat went raw. Behind her, Hope struggled to her feet, three-legged, trembling. The mare pressed against Sarah's back, not for protection, Sarah realized, but offering it, saying, "I'm here. We fight together." For a long, terrible moment, the three of them formed a triangle of calculation and courage. Then the lion turned, disappearing over the ridge with a flick of its tail that seemed almost like respect. Sarah collapsed against Hope, both of them shaking. "Jesus," she gasped. "Jesus Christ." But Hope was already calmer, head lowered, lipping at Sarah's hair in reassurance. "We're okay. We survived. Again." That night, Sarah drove to town and bought a rifle she couldn't afford. She also did something she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. She called her daughter. "Emma, it's Mom." Silence on the other end. Then, "Hi." Sarah's voice cracked. "I just needed to hear your voice. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom. I gotta go. I'm doing homework." "Wait, please, I saved a horse. A few weeks ago. She was trapped and hurt, and I thought she was going to die, but she didn't. She's going to be okay, and I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did wrong. Why you're angry." More silence. Then, very quietly, "What's her name?" "Hope." "That's a good name." A pause. "Maybe I could meet her, sometime." Sarah closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I would love that, anytime. She'd love that too." After they hung up, Sarah sat in her truck for a long time, crying in a way she hadn't let herself cry since the divorce. Not sad tears, not even happy tears, just the tears that come when you finally stop running and realize you're exhausted but not broken. Wounded but healing. When she returned to the paddock, Hope was waiting at the fence, backlit by moonlight, looking like something out of a dream. Sarah climbed through the rails and wrapped her arms around the mare's neck. "She's going to visit," Sarah whispered. "My daughter. She wants to meet you." Hope nickered softly, and in that sound, Sarah heard everything she needed to. "I know. I'm glad. We've been waiting for this." By the end of the second month, Hope was bearing weight on all 4 legs. By the 3rd month, she was walking sound at a trot. Dr. Martinez called it a miracle. Sarah called it stubbornness, the same quality that had kept Hope alive in that silo, the same quality that was slowly stitching Sarah's life back together. Emma visited on a Saturday in October. She was 12 now, almost 13, with her father's skeptical eyes and Sarah's stubborn chin. She stood at the paddock gate, arms crossed, trying to pretend she didn't care. Hope walked over immediately, curious. She lowered her head, breathing softly against Emma's chest, and something in Emma's careful walls crumbled. "She's beautiful," Emma whispered. "She's brave," Sarah corrected, "and strong, and she never gave up, even when giving up would have been easier. Emma looked at her mother then, really looked, and Sarah saw her daughter seeing her, not as the woman who'd chosen horses over family, but as the woman who'd learned, painfully and late, that saving others only matters if you haven't lost yourself in the process. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, "for all of it, for not being there, for making you feel like you weren't enough." "I know," Emma said, and then, after a moment, "Can I brush her?" They spent the afternoon together, the three of them, learning each other's languages. Emma told stories about school and friends and the boy she might like. Sarah listened, really listened, and didn't check her phone, didn't think about chores, didn't let her mind wander to the 100 other things she used to use as excuses to avoid being present. And hope stood between them, patient and solid, a bridge made of trust and second chances. When Emma's father came to pick her up, Emma hugged Sarah for the first time in months. "Can I come back next weekend?" she asked. "Every weekend," Sarah promised, "as long as you want." That night, Sarah lay beside Hope in the shelter, the fabric horse toy tucked in her pocket, and realized she wasn't running anymore. She was here, present, healing. Hope sighed contentedly, her weight settling against the earth. Outside, coyotes called to each other across the desert. An owl hunted in the darkness. The world kept spinning, indifferent to their small victories. But inside the shelter, two survivors rested together, learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't saving someone else. Sometimes it's letting yourself be saved in return. 6 months after the rescue, Dr. Martinez stood in Sarah's paddock with a clipboard and a smile that said everything before she spoke the words. "She's sound," the vet announced, watching Hope trot across the dirt with her head high, muscles rippling under a coat that had grown back glossy and strong. Full weight bearing on all 4 legs. Range of motion is excellent. No heat, no swelling. Whatever you've been doing, it's working. Sarah felt her chest constrict. She'd known this day was coming, had been working toward it even. But now that it was here, she felt like she was standing at the edge of that collapsed silo again, staring into darkness. So she's ready to be adopted? To have a real home? Dr. Martinez gave her a long look. "Sarah, this is her home. Unless you don't want..." "It's not that." Sarah watched Hope play with a jolly ball, tossing it with her nose, ears pricked forward with pure joy. She deserves more than this. More than 10 acres of scrubland and a shelter that leaks when it rains. She deserves a real barn, a herd, someone who can afford proper care without choosing between her vet bills and their rent. She deserves someone who would crawl into a collapsing grain silo to save her life, Dr. Martinez said quietly. Someone who sat with her every night for a month. Someone who taught her that humans can be trusted again. You really think she'd be happier somewhere else? Sarah didn't answer. because the truth was more complicated than that. Hope had saved her, given her purpose when she'd forgotten what that felt like, given her a reason to stay in one place, to build something instead of running. But Sarah's lease was month to month. Her savings were nearly gone, and Emma deserved a mother who could provide stability, not someone living paycheck to paycheck at the edge of nowhere. "I need to think about it," Sarah said finally. That night, she lay beside Hope in the shelter, running her fingers through the mare's mane. The fabric horse toy sat on the fence post nearby. Emma had left it there on her last visit, saying Hope could keep it until next time. "What do I do?" Sarah whispered. "Tell me what to do." Hope turned her head, dark eye reflecting starlight, and Sarah felt the weight of 6 months of trust settling between them. This mare had chosen to live when dying would have been easier, had chosen to trust when every instinct said humans were predators, had chosen to fight again and again when the world kept trying to break her. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe love wasn't about holding on. Maybe it was about having the courage to let go. Sarah spent the next week making calls. She found a ranch 40 miles north. Good people. She'd worked with them before the divorce. They had pastures that rolled green and endless, a barn that would keep Hope warm in winter, a herd of mares that would welcome her. They'd take her, gladly. No adoption fee, just the promise that Hope would be loved. Emma came that Saturday and found Sarah sitting on the fence, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, climbing up beside her mother. "Hope's healed. She's ready for more. Better." "Better than you?" Sarah flinched. "Better than this. She deserves—" "Mom!" Emma's voice was sharp, cutting. "Stop deciding what other people deserve and ask them what they want. She's a horse. I can't just—" "When you called me 3 months ago, you asked if I wanted to visit. You didn't decide I was better off without you and disappear. You asked." Sarah turned to look at her daughter, this almost teenager with old eyes and a wisdom Sarah had never earned. "That's different." "Is it? You spent my whole life deciding what I needed instead of listening to what I wanted. You decided I needed a mom who was home more, so you left. You decided I needed space, so you stopped calling. You decided everything except the one thing that mattered, which was just asking me." Tears burned behind Sarah's eyes. "What did you want?" "You," Emma said simply. "I just wanted you. Messed up and obsessed with horses and always smelling like hay. I wanted you, not some perfect version you thought you had to be." Hope walked over to the fence, drawn by their voices. She pushed her head against Sarah's chest, that gesture she'd learned in the silo, that language they'd created together. "I'm here. You're not alone." "I think she wants the same thing," Emma said. The storm came 3 weeks later, a late spring thunderstorm that turned the sky purple-black and sent lightning cracking across the horizon. Sarah was in town picking up feed when her phone rang. "Sarah, it's Tom Garrett from the ranch north of you." His voice was tight with worry. "We've got a situation. A mare came down from the hills about an hour ago, won't leave the fence line. She's wearing a halter with your phone number on it." Sarah's heart stopped. "Hope? If that's her name, yeah. Storm spooked the whole herd and they busted through a gate. We got everyone back except her. She took off toward your place. Been standing at our fence screaming her head off. We can't catch her. She's pretty adamant about going somewhere." Sarah was in her truck before he finished talking, tires kicking gravel as she flew down the dirt roads. The rain started before she made it home, fat drops that exploded against the windshield, turning visibility to nothing. She kept driving, wipers at full speed, heart hammering. The paddock gate was still closed. She'd locked it that morning, protecting the empty space she hadn't been able to bring herself to rent out yet. But standing on the other side, soaked and shaking, was Hope. Sarah jumped out of the truck. "Hope!" The mare wheeled, ears forward, and screamed. Not fear, relief, recognition. "You came back." Sarah fumbled with the gate latch, her hands shaking too badly to work the lock. Behind her, lightning struck close enough to feel, and Hope reared, pawing at the fence, desperate to get through. "I'm trying," Sarah shouted over the thunder. "I'm trying, baby, just—" The lock gave. Sarah swung the gate open and Hope burst through, nearly knocking her down. The mare circled once, twice, then stood in front of the shelter, her shelter, trembling and snorting, rain streaming down her face. Sarah walked toward her slowly, arms out. "You came home." Hope lowered her head, pressing her forehead against Sarah's chest. And Sarah understood then what she'd been too afraid to see. This wasn't about deserving. It was never about deserving. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when the world said it was easier to let go. "Okay," Sarah whispered, wrapping her arms around Hope's neck. "Okay, you want to stay? We stay. Both of us. No more running." The storm raged around them, but inside that small circle of trust they'd built, one painful choice at a time, everything was still. 1 year after the rescue, Sarah stood in her paddock, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. The shelter had a new roof now. The fence was reinforced, and in the corner, munching hay with her head low and content, stood Hope. Beside her, a smaller shape, a paint filly, 3 months old, with her mother's wise eyes and bold markings. Sarah hadn't planned on breeding Hope, but life, she'd learned, didn't much care about plans. The filly had come early one March morning, when Sarah was still learning how to be present instead of perfect. Emma had been there, had watched the whole birth with wide eyes and steady hands, had helped clean the foal and guide her to her first meal. Mother and daughter working together to welcome new life, the kind of moment Sarah used to think she didn't deserve. She'd named the filly Phoenix, for rising from ashes, for second chances, for the way broken things could be made whole if you gave them time and trust and the courage to try again. Emma visited every weekend now. They developed routines, Saturday mornings feeding together, afternoons trail riding on horses Sarah had started training again. She'd built her business back slowly, not the huge operation she'd run before, but something smaller, more manageable. Something that left room for Emma's school plays and doctor's appointments and all the small moments she'd missed before. The ranch up north still asked about Hope sometimes. Sarah always said the same thing. She's exactly where she's supposed to be. Because some things weren't about money or size or what looked good from the outside. Some things were about showing up when it was hard, about staying when running would be easier, about learning that love wasn't measured in what you could provide, but in what you were willing to sacrifice. Hope had taught her that. In a collapsed grain silo with a storm coming and death whispering promises of surrender. The mare had chosen to live, and in doing so, had taught Sarah how. Sarah climbed through the fence and walked to where Hope stood with Phoenix. The mare lifted her head, hay hanging from her mouth, eyes soft with contentment. The filly pranced over, all legs and curiosity, demanding attention. "You know what you did, don't you?" Sarah said to Hope. "You saved me. And then you came back when I tried to convince myself you'd be better off gone. You stubborn, beautiful thing." Hope nickered, that same soft sound she'd made in the silo when Sarah had promised not to leave. It sounded like forgiveness, like welcome, like home. Sarah pressed her face into Hope's mane and breathed in the scent of horse and hay and the particular sweetness of new beginnings. Phoenix bumped against her leg, wanting in on the moment, and Sarah laughed, a sound she'd forgotten she knew how to make. The sun slipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of purple and gold. In the distance, thunder rumbled, another storm coming, because storms always came. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. She'd learned something in that silo, in those desperate hours when she'd chosen to fight for a horse she didn't know. She'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was deciding that something mattered more than being afraid. Hope mattered. Emma mattered. This small life they were building together, imperfect and messy and real, mattered more than any fear Sarah could name. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. "Come on, girls," Sarah said, gathering their lead ropes. "Let's get you tucked in for the night." As they walked toward the shelter, woman, horse, and filly moving together through the gathering darkness, Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly, something deeper, something that felt like peace. She'd spent so long trying to save things that she'd forgotten how to let herself be saved. But hope had taught her, with patience and stubbornness and that bottomless well of trust that prey animals give only to those who've proven themselves worthy. They'd saved each other. In the end, that was the only truth that mattered. And as the first stars appeared overhead, hope nickered once more, a sound like a promise, like a benediction, like the end of one story and the beginning of something even better. We're home. Finally, we're home. Sarah and Hope's story didn't end that day in the silo. It was just beginning. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose not to give up, on others or ourselves. If this story touched something in you, I'd be grateful if you'd share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every like and share helps these stories reach people who are fighting their own battles, human and animal alike. Consider subscribing to see more rescue stories, each one a reminder that broken things can heal, that trust can be rebuilt, and that second chances are always worth fighting for. Thank you for riding along with Sarah and Hope. Your time here matters more than you know.